A huge thank you to Jackal Motorsports for sponsoring today's video, and stick around to the end to get your $50 off coupon for any tune on jackalmotorsports.com. Just to catch you up to speed, if you haven't watched the build series, boom, check it out right there. That is about a year's worth of work on the 25 Quattro here. I went top to bottom, front to back, did lots of good maintenance, driveline components. I did DIY flapper mod, piggy pipes, custom catch can, overhauled the cooling system, a lot of stuff. If you have an S4, I highly recommend checking out those videos. I'm sure there's something in there that you can do for yourself and get inspired. And honestly, since I've done the last S4 video, I've just been driving it and having a good time, which is kind of weird for me because I tend to have a lot of projects in the garage and I don't enjoy the driving end of the car enthusiast world. But that's what I've been trying to do. Just going out there, having a rip, going out to local Euro car meets. I've been seeing lots of cool things and meeting some neat people. Just been having a good time. Now, way back in episode 1 of the build series, I told you that my goal for this car was reliable power, just a mean street machine that I could rely on to just jump in and go at any time. And the car has been really reliable. I've put about 1,000 kilometers on it since you and I last spoke, and it's been great. And the cherry on top for me personally is that when I recently scanned the ECU with my Rostec cable, there are 0 DTCs stored. -1 radio fault, I just don't care about. I'm gonna call it 0. And that's why I keep harping on the reliability, because that, with the car feeling and running good, and the fact that I know this car is not gonna be winter driven anymore at all, I am now comfortable pushing the performance of this car ahead. So I think you guys know where this is going already. Yes, this car will be receiving this ECU tuned by Jackal Motorsports, but you know me in my videos by now, I'm not just gonna glaze over the details. No, I want this series to be your one-stop shop for deciding what to do with your S4 tune. I'm gonna give you the full breakdown with all the final numbers. So what's gonna happen here is I'm gonna show you what a normal driving experience is like on the B6 or B7 S4 platform that's mostly stock. And then we're going to take a look at what's on the market right now. If you're out there shopping for a tune, who's offering what at what price point? And then we're going to talk with a special guest. And then I'm going to show you how to remove and swap your ECU. Steve here, and I'm sat in a 2006 Audi S4 with all-wheel drive and a 6-speed manual. It's a beautiful morning and we're off for a drive. And what's really nice about this car is that although you're probably looking for a little bit more power out of a tune, this thing already has quite a bit of zip. I mean, you probably got into this car because you know this car's got 344 horsepower at the crank and 300 foot-pounds of torque, and you get every pound of that torque speed trap all the way at 3,000 RPM. So when it comes to acceleration in the car, because you have all that torque down low, the acceleration does feel pretty good. So here's second. And as we get up past 6, you know, we're moving. The acceleration feels linear, feels pretty good, but you just don't feel like you have a lot of top end power. Now, obviously, you're gonna be doing a lot of city driving with cars like these. They're not track cars. You're not gonna be out all the time ripping through gears. So daily drivability is super important. And I've found that with the lightweight front crank pulley, I'm still having a little bit of trouble rev matching on my shifts. That one was fairly smooth, but I find myself constantly over blipping, and my down to second is usually not great, you know, a little judder there. And I'm still fine-tuning my shifting process, but my point overall is you have to do a lot of rolling on and off of the accelerator, upshifting and downshifting. I call out upshifting because I found that these engines, they kind of like a little bit of extra accelerator between shifts. If you go a little too slow, kind of like that, or don't give it a little bit of juice between the shifts, the revs will drop actually a little too quickly and you'll have that forward jerking motion that just makes you look a little bit dumb. But as I said, you know, I can drop a gear into 5th. I'm on the freeway going uphill. I can put the pedal to about 50% and it feels really, really smooth. Power comes on nice and linear, but I don't feel like I'm being caught off guard by the accelerator putting too much input into the ECU and saying, hey, let's go. It's really nice and smooth, very, very drivable. Now, when it comes to the fuel mileage, honestly, I'm not counting. I think we all know getting into this car that you're not looking to put down some great mileage to get between work or highway driving. This is your fun car. It certainly is just for me. And if you don't get great mileage, you're not really all that fussed. Even with the gas prices these days, you know, this is considered a fun car. In terms of sound, especially with the piggy pipes, this thing already makes all the right noises. But hey, if it can sound better, I'll take it. Now from a dig, I've always thought that these cars actually sound pretty great. All you need to do is about 4,000 RPM and kind of fiddle their clutch and dump it, and you're out of here. Now obviously it takes a little bit of skill in the feet to do something like that. And there's no launch control in these cars, kind of before its time, or, you know, not for a car like this. But I'm really interested to see what this thing can do with a little bit of coordination from the computer. So I mean, these cars, they're fun, for sure. You can definitely go out and have a good time, go for a cruise. It's a great enthusiast car. And if you drive the hell out of it, yeah, it's cool. But I wouldn't exactly say it's exhilarating. You know, there are wilder cars out there. There's a bunch of, you know, new actual domestic muscle cars that, you know, I wouldn't go up against on the highway. Of course, it's not an exotic. It doesn't make all the crazy noises. So I think we could definitely have some more fun with this thing. You know, it's hard to drive and still tell a good story at the same time. I think you guys got my point. You know, the car is still really fun, but it's 16 years old and a little tame by today's standards. A great example is I was recently leaving a Euro car meet here in the city and a guy was like, give it some revs on the way out. And I just kind of pretended to like not hear it and just drove off because although the car like looks pretty cool now, if I were to give it a few revs, it's still pretty tame and it doesn't really have that big persona that I'm looking for. So here you are, committed to finding a tune to fill in that character gap of your car. And although I am clearly in favor of the Jackal solution, I know that you work hard for your money and you want to know what's best out there, and I want to save you time in your search. So here's what's out there for the 4.2 liter 40 valve. Truthfully, your list of options is actually pretty short after the exclusions that I put onto it because I want to level the playing field for you, which could be anyone in the world, honestly. So number one is no traditional chip tuning. It has to be software based, whether that's ECU or TCU. It has to be modern software tuning. Number two is no one-off tuners that only do in-house programming themselves. Number three is an extension, which is even if there is a tune that's been made available to a very wide assortment of local authorized dealerships that can do the tune, that is still in-house tuning only and not widely available to the market. So sorry, APR, that one's cut from the list already. And then the last one is that it has to be done so that you can send in your ECU to get flashed or buy a core that's been pre-flashed or a combination of that and allow the tuner to remote in to do the installation or tuning for you. In other words, for this evaluation, you have to be available as the tuner provider to the entire enthusiast market. I've found 4 companies that meet those criteria, and I've broken down this evaluation by their tuning packages, which features are included, what fuels are associated with each, the prerequisite mods, the crank power advertised, and of course, cost. One option you'll find online is from Jackal Motorsports. They offer a single tune for the 4.2, but they do make it available in both 91 and 93 fuel options. And although they don't write in text on the page what you can expect out of performance or features, they do have a couple of videos of their shop cars giving you an understanding of what you might be able to achieve yourself. Now they say that you should have a 2.5-inch exhaust system from the headers back, so that's including the downpipes and the catback system, and this tune will run you just short of 600 US. Next up is Unitronic. They have 3 different tunes to choose from, Stage 1, 1 Plus, and 2. You can use 91 grade fuel on Stage 1, but you'll need 93 for 1 Plus and 2. And it's worth calling out that there are no requirements to change anything on your car to get these Stage 1 tunes, but for Stage 2, they say an upgraded exhaust is required, although they don't specifically state which part of the system needs to be upgraded. In terms of performance, Unitronic basically just says the car's going to run better. They call out better fuel efficiency and the fact that they removed the top speed that was previously limited electronically, and you can expect to get anywhere between 22 and 35 horsepower out of this, and 20 and 53 extra foot-pounds of torque depending on which tune you choose. Prices are listed in Canadian dollars, so adjusted for today's value, you can expect to pay anywhere between 400 and 470 USD. I threw one wildcard option on here. I came across Vivid Racing. They have a single tune available for both 91 and 93 grade fuels, and they do also talk about fuel savings that you can get out of this and make an inference that there are some other party modes, maybe like launch control, available when they say custom enhancements. But what really stood out to me were some of these other features around how you can add different mechanical performance parts after the fact or different quality fuel, and that the ECU is going to know and adapt the tune. Now, I'm not sure that actually makes sense based on my car knowledge. Obviously, these cars have a whole bunch of sensors on it, and maybe a very clever individual could write a whole lot of if-then statements in their code and try to make inferences to know when these modifications have been done. But as far as I can tell, unless you have something like a flex fuel sensor that actually tells the car what grade of fuel, it's only going to know whether it's running rich or lean. VR says this magic tune might net you 25 horsepower and 18 foot-pounds of torque, and you can have it for $600 US. Last and certainly not least, let's take an expanded look at Jackal Motorsports because there is a ton of information to look at. One of the best parts of the Jackal Tune options is that you can customize both the fuel setups and additional features for wherever your car's at in its performance journey, plus how lively you want to get. For example, you can choose stage 1 through 3, all with their own variants of 91 or 93 grade fuel. As you modify your car over time, you might decide to progress through the stages and use better fuel, finally arriving at stage 4, which can net you the most power, or you can stay in stage 1 to 3, but choose to run E85 on them as well. That means, for example, you could choose a stage 2 tune, but if you install a high flow fuel filter and a fuel pump that can handle over 300 liters per hour of flow, you could request a stage 2 E85 tune. Every tune comes with a completely transformed driving experience, also featuring better fuel economy, that is, if you can manage to keep your lead foot in check, more power over the entire stock horsepower and torque curves, plus launch control. And if you drive a manual S4, you also receive a 300 RPM bump up on your redline, bringing you to 7,500 RPM. The options continue with the popular choices of two-step, the burble or pops and bangs, and no-lift shifting. All those options can be independently selected though, so if burble isn't your cup of tea, or you're not quite sure if you want to use two-step with your stock catalytic converters, that is totally up to you and can be left off of your personalized tune. One sign that a tuner is really close to a certain car community is when the mods list for each stage mentions upgrades that are commonly used for that specific model of car. A great example of that is how Jackal is the only tuner that talks about ported intake manifolds or the flapper mod. Looking at the performance gains now, although Jackal absolutely does dyno test all of their tunes and advertises the realistic all-wheel power gains that you can expect from each tune, for the sake of a fair comparison, those figures have been adjusted now to crank power since that's what the other tunes mentioned earlier advertise. Not even counting the other benefits of the Jackal tunes, they also offer as much or more performance compared to every other tune in our comparison. Last, when it comes to cost, you can expect to pay $400 to $625 US, depending on whether you're buying a pre-flashed ECU or you're sending yours in to get programmed, and whether you have a B6 or B7. This means that your selection of higher stages or additional options does not make the tune any more expensive. For those of you out there with custom turbo builds or aftermarket superchargers, for $600, Jackal offers tuning services for you as well. Custom tuning services are available for off-road and race vehicles that are never street-driven, including your cars in whichever country around the world you may live in. There you go, a couple hours back in your life for the research you did not have to do. Now, looking at tunes on paper is one thing, but you also have to ask, how do I know the company behind my tune is credible and knows what they're doing? Well, please allow me to introduce to you Mr. Matt Barrington.
My name is Matt. I am one of the owners of Jackal Motorsports. There's two of us. One of them couldn't be here today. He's Tony Pinto. Full-time, I work for my fire department in town. Aside from that, I run Jackal. I do all the marketing, all the sales, all the shipment. I do all the mechanical work in-house, all the performance, installations, everything hands-on. That's basically what I do for Jackal.
Tony the Wizard. Who's Tony?
Yep. So Tony, I've known Tony for 14 or 15 years. Believe it or not, we started out with Subarus, which we then ventured over into Audis. You know, he's been a computer engineer for well over a decade, and he just has all the smarts to be able to decipher what everything is and make all the proper changes and know what does and doesn't need to be changed at this point in basically all the platforms. Same with the transmissions, a lot of the new platforms. One of the big things is the transmission tunes. You know, you get an ECU tune, but you're limited by your transmission. There's lots of torque limiting settings, shift speed, output shaft speed stuff that you really need to get dialed in, because you can have a really good ECU tune in fourth gear on the dyno, but when you go take it through the gears, if the transmission's limiting your power, you're not going to be able to use it. That was one of the big step ups that he made in the past couple of years, was getting very good at transmission tuning.
So you mentioned you started with Subarus, and now obviously you're doing Audis pretty much exclusively, I think, right? And I swear every time I look at the website, you're offering more and more for the Audi platform. Is there something that really drew you to Audis, or why are they so special and sort of featured on the Jackal tunes?
You know, I've always liked Audis. Originally before I had gotten a Subaru, I wanted to get a B5 S4. I kind of found a B6 S4 for very cheap that was local, under $1,000 actually. It was just sitting in someone's driveway for I don't know how long, had a for sale sign on it with no price. I drove by it for a couple months. I have worked on Euro cars, BMWs, Audis for a couple of years, mechanically in the shop. One day I just asked the person, what was up with the car. They said it needed a timing chain. They got quoted 8 to 10 grand somewhere to do it. And that they weren't interested in doing it. So it's just kind of been sitting. I just asked him kind of what the bare bone he would take for it. And the guy told me $800. So I snagged it. I did the timing on it, a new clutch and everything, and loved how it sounded. It had an AWE tuning exhaust on it. Drove it for a little bit, chatted with Tony about possibly something that we could do with them. Like I said, we had specialized in Subaru for probably a decade at this point, tuning a lot of high horsepower Subarus that we would build in-house. And he was able to figure out all the coding on it. It just kind of went from there. We spent a lot of time on the dyno, a lot of time driving the car for drivability purposes. We've jumped into all the V8 platforms.
And the rest, they say, is history. So Matt, people get pretty excited when they decide to tune their car because they see it as purchasing speed and maybe a more refined driving experience and possibly some cool things like launch control. But all of that is what you're actually programming into the ECU and deliver as what we call the tune, right? But how would you describe what a tune is and what types of things in the ECU are changed when you're tuning?
Different tuners will change different portions of the ECU. Everybody expects, more power out of a tune. And I mean, in almost every case, you do get that. Some people are able to extract more by changing different things that other people may not have coding access to or have custom patches that they put into. A lot of the basic things that get tuned as the throttle mapping, ignition timing. There are other things that certain tuners tweak, certain tuners don't. Cam timing is a big thing. There's a couple other things in the tune that we, adjust, like top speed limiter. We spent a lot of time driving the car, just daily driving to get the smoothest tune that we can all around. Some people will go to other places for tuning and you just get a powerful tune and the car can drive kind of choppy and not be smooth in traffic. When we built this tune, we wanted it to be, the 100% best we could give in all driving, mainly cruising, because a lot of people just go out and cruise or they daily drive it. So you want to have something that's smooth, comfortable.
Like you just mentioned, you do offer things like the burble, two-step, no lift shifting, and every single one of your tunes comes with launch control. Can you spend a little time describing what each of those are and what the benefits are?
The two-step is kind of like a hard launch control. On the manual cars, you have two options for launch. We have the two-step, which is based off of your cruise control. You want to have it set in the off position, which is also when the burble is on, and that's on deceleration over 2000. That's the subtle pops that people like. For the launch, basically, you have your cruise control stock in either position, and it'll change the RPM. So we have the two-step launch, which is with the cruise control off, and then the normal soft launch, which is with the cruise control towards you. The two-step is set at 5,000. The normal launch is set at 5,400. And basically, to launch the manual, turn your traction control off. You'll set your cruise control stock to whatever RPM your car launches better at. Some cars, depending on your tire setup, launch better at the lower RPM. Some of them, if you're more sticky, you need the higher. Simply put your clutch in, car in gear, hold the gas all the way to the floor till it stops at the desired RPM, I guess you would say. And then you just dump your clutch and off you go. For the automatics, it's more of an assist because they have a torque converter. So there's obviously a stall. Some cars, stalls are a little higher depending on the mechanical condition of the transmission. The two-step still does work for the automatics. You have to be in park or neutral and stopped because that one's based off of vehicle speed versus the clutch switch, which the manuals are based off of. You just hold the gas to the floor anytime you're in park or neutral with that cruise control stock forward, and it stops at 5,000. The burble is the same thing, deceleration over 2,000. But the launch for the autos, you have the traction control off. They seem to launch better in sport. You got to hold the brake all the way to the floor with all your pressure. Hold the gas down. The car will rev up to whatever the stall is on the transmission at the time. Some people, it's around 2. I've seen some of them like 26, 27, and then you just let off the brake. Kind of like the newer DSG stuff. Just hold the brake, hold the gas. Off you go. So the no lift shift is really popular in the Subaru world, or mostly any boosted car that's a manual. It's an attempt to help rev match, and if you're boosted, it helps you keep boost. So for the S4s, we have it set. You have to have the two-step burble option on, and basically, anytime you're over 5,000 RPMs, you can keep the gas all the way to the floor, press the clutch in and shift the car, and it'll make a rev limit wherever you are above 5,000. So if you're at 6, it'll be like kind of hitting like a rev limit, and you can keep that gas floored and just dump the clutch out. It helps some people that may not be fast at shifting a manual shift a little faster. I've had a couple customers tell me that they get a tenth or so faster in their quarter-mile times using it. And like I tell a lot of people, you can get the options and you don't have to use them because you can just flick it off. People ask about the cruise control. It's still fully functional. Like I said, we have those options on only when the cruise control is actually off. You can drive around your car with the cruise control stalk pulled towards you or on, and obviously it doesn't set anything until you hit the set button. And you can do that anytime on the fly. You don't have to be sitting parked or in neutral. You can just flick that anytime you're driving and it'll turn that option on or off.
So with all that stuff in mind, my car right now has a lot of good maintenance done, but when it comes to performance, really all I have is that intake manifold that I put the flapper mod on, not ported though. It's sitting on intake spacers. I have a totally stock air intake system, and my downpipes are totally gutted, but I have an OE cat system behind that. I do have access to really good grade 93 fuel. What tune should I have?
For that, the perfect one, in my opinion, is a stage 1. The stage 1 tune covers 100% stock car to a car that has, a drop-in air filter. Some people make their own intakes, to, catless full exhaust system.
Matt, thanks so much for your time. We learned a ton for sure. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, what's the way to hit you up?
My email is matt@jackalmotorsports.com. Cell phone numbers on the website that people can text me anytime, email or text, or the contact form through the website. One of the big things that we pride ourselves with is like customer support and service. I have people texting me questions at 11:30 at night that I have no problem answering anytime, unless I'm sleeping pretty much.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. And now, with all the confidence in the world of the Jackal ECU that I'll be installing, let's do some work on the car to get at the old ECU. This is the classic remove a thing to get at another thing, to get at another thing, to get at the ECU. First up, we want to lose the windshield wipers on the car. And to do that, you need to get at a 16mm nut that is below these black plastic caps. And there's a little notch in there that you can pop in a screwdriver or a pick or something like that and just wrestle these things off. Don't worry, I definitely know where that cap went flying to and didn't just spend 20 minutes taking stuff apart trying to find it just to give up to keep this video rolling. Said nuts to remove. Note that when you put them back on, the torque is 13 foot-pounds, and in terms of the windshield wipers themselves, they're not keyed back here. So if you want to put these windshield wipers back to the exact position that Audi says they should be, here's a little shot from the Bentley manual I took for you. You can see that there is a very unique way to measure where the positions of both the driver and passenger wipers are when you tighten them back down. Now at this point, the internet might tell you that you can just grab the wiper and start wrestling it back and forth and pop it off. Mine are actually pretty rusted, and I knew this was going to be a problem, so I picked up a tool from Lyle here. Unit number you can see 54150. I'll put a link to the Amazon item in the description of this video. And this is to wrestle off stubborn wiper arms and battery terminals too. So I'll give this a go. This puller tool was so necessary. It wasn't necessary to do a time lapse because on the passenger arm there it came off in like 2 seconds, so testament to this tool. But I did not have as good luck on the driver's side, and I'll show you what ended up being successful for me. So you can pop up the arm underneath the hood like so. So it's loose here. This is just for mock purposes. And what I found I needed to do was grab the blade like so, pull it towards me, towards the camera, especially if you're using a tool of this shape. You end up hitting a bunch of stuff. And once you kind of crank back on this, it'll bend the plastic, but it won't break it. And that'll allow the little arms here to properly get under here, get a good grip, shove down on that post, and off she came. Now, thankfully, for a couple of easy step interludes, we get to just take off weather stripping, like so, and then pull off your rain tray cover as well. Comes out pretty easy. Choose your own adventure time. Do you want to go around the haunted forest and take off the rain cowl to make your life a little easier to get at one of those ECU box bolts at the back? Or do you want to be the wobble and extension god and try to wiggle it out from the side? If you want to take that long way around, you can go ahead and take out 3 clips. There's going to be one in the corner, one in the middle, and then one on the side. They're just little black metal things. They look like so. And that will loosen up the front end of the rain tray cowl. And what you can do from at that point is try to work open the crack that meets at the windshield here and lift this whole cowl up and then take it out. I'm not going to do that. I'm going for wobble god status. So I took off that clip, and you did all of this work basically to remove this driver's side windshield wiper just to move this up and down, because there is going to be a Torx headed screw back down here. because that is in fact your mission now. Remove the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 T30 Torx headed screws that are holding down the ECU cover. You should now be looking at something like this and this in your toolbox. Do you have one of these? This is a mini ratcheting bit wrench. I've shown this on the channel before, and the link to the Amazon item is in the description of this video. But basically you can take any individual bit, put it into the head here, and it gives you the smallest possible profile to tuck your wrench into little places and start backing out screws. Next up, just want to remove this restraining clip here. Screwdriver, in, push, down, pop it out. So at this point you are almost done, but you're at the trickiest part probably because of tooling for this job, because ultimately all you're trying to do is unplug the two big plugs on the top back of the ECU. Now you can tell that Audi has gone ahead and just spot welded a little bit of a bracket there, the silver thing top left, to hold those plugs in place. And what you need to do is make a decision. Either you need to remove it somehow, some way, or another popular way is to just cut a notch into these two bolts right here, at which point you can ignore that this exists and just slide the ECU out the side. And I am going to go ahead and notch these, if not only for the fact that it requires the most minimal cutting, and I'm going to do that with my rotary tool. Now I understand that a lot of you may not have something like this. Maybe you have a big angle grinder, which will work if you're careful, or a hacksaw, or anything sharp to put a notch into these bolt heads, and that's fine. But I do recommend something you can be very careful with the precision on. Yeah, I shaved between the last scene and this one. Anyways, operation was a success. Mostly anyways. Don't do what I did. Now this, you can see the notch isn't right down the middle, but it was good enough to back out. Do note that there is blue Loctite on there. These things are in pretty good, but on the left-hand side one, you may have noticed at the end of that time lapse, it broke half the head off. I cut it a little bit too much on the side, and I just lost a second thing into the engine bay. Anyways, this is ready to unplug. And now, finally, let's take out the ECU. So, careful not to cut myself because it's pretty sharp. The entire point of taking out those bolts on the other side was that it was blocking you from sliding it out that way. We'll push, push, shimmy, shimmy, and out she comes. Lift this little plate off. Okay, and now that it's sticking out and the whole plug is available, I'm trying to give you guys the good view. There we go. Push back this way. Ow. Ow. There we go. Yay. And new hotness going in. I'm just going to do a bit of a temporary version here. Now that I know how these connectors work a little bit better. As you pull, they actually suck themselves in or pop themselves out. You don't just pull straight back. So it's actually a bit of a combo like that. And I'm gonna just keep it just like this for now. Let's get a little first fire action, shall we? Also know that every time I open the garage between now and like March, since it's winter here in Edmonton now, I lose heat and I'm losing money. So I'm doing it for you guys. And take off. Interesting. It does sound a little different. Let's let her warm up just a little bit. It's definitely sounding pretty smooth. And it sounds a little choppy too. Maybe it's just my imagination. That's it. That's all you get for now. Things are sounding mighty spicy back there, but I'm headed straight to the dyno for the next part in this two-parter, because what I'm going to do is leave things nice and accessible up on the ECU box so that I can easily swap between my stock ECU and the Jackal ECU. And we're going to do back-to-back dyno pulls and see what the final numbers are. Last, as promised, FIA50 is your coupon code to jackalmotorsports.com for $50 off any tune that they offer, whether it's for the 4.2 S4 tune like mine or any of the other tunes that they offer. $50 back in your pocket, because I'm hoping that this video has already convinced you that Jackal is the way to go. But if you want to be a holdout and watch what my dyno results are coming up, that's cool too. Coupon code will still be waiting for you then. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, please subscribe to the channel, find me on Instagram at FigureItAudi, and I'll see you again soon.